Hello, welcome to Heart Explained Therapy, and I want to make a video on a personal experience that I have, which I think a lot of people will connect to. I've realised that I have a problem when someone doesn't understand my intention. It could be through a sarcastic joke most of the time, or a bit of dark humour, or a certain just a certain comment that's made and the other person takes it the right way. And I've noticed that I've become, the more aware that I get, the more sensitive I've come to this fact of this existence, how someone interprets your actions to mean a completely different story. And it puts me in a very difficult position, because most of the time I'm trying to highlight certain areas of people's lives that is negative and painful, and stuff that they never really talk about. It's not the normal agenda. And then because you sort of go into a place which does trigger emotions, you then can kind of become alienated from people, from friends, from family, because they're not understanding your intention. And I always go back to this sort of story that is Plato's story, and it's the allegory of the cave, and I've made a video about this. Make sure you watch it. Go back a few months and you'll see this video. And it's basically how you can't really tell anybody your belief and opinion, because they have their own and they're not really willing to change, especially not in a sort of quick conversation. And then I thought this might connect with people, because I'm sure that everybody's experienced a time when they've done something and they've been totally misinterpreted, and you've probably felt really bad. You've probably felt guilt that you said anything at all when you was just trying to help, or just frustrated because somebody just doesn't get what you're trying to say. And then you could probably counter argue, and I think the unconscious mind would love to just ego defend and say, hold on a sec, I'm just right and I'm trying to help you. But then there's another part where you're a bit more conscious and you're like, could I have worded this different? Could I have expressed it different? Is there a way to subtly tell somebody bad news in a way? And what I've noticed is everybody sort of has this problem with other people. We are social creatures. We are trying to constantly get relationships with people. Even when you have to make some sort of complaint on a telephone call to somebody you don't know, there's a relationship that has to take place to get your message across. Now, some people can just go mad, and this person who has some training in this doesn't really get affected by it and just has to tell you the protocols. But when it comes to real life situations and people, I suppose, that you care about, it's a shame that we have to fall out so much. We have to have arguments. And it's made me sort of look at what arguments are. And arguments are just difference of opinions, and you haven't got a judge there to say who's right or wrong. And really, when you think about two people having two separate beliefs, let's just say, let's take an Arsenal and a Tottenham Hotspurs fan, complete rivals that will never ever agree because of this different belief. Now you see that there's certain areas of this conversation where you're never going to break down your true interpretation, and you have to live with the pain and suffering that you perceive that you see in somebody else, and in fact stay in silence. And I've struggled to get my head around this, because I believe that I see pain and suffering. I believe that I see it on a conscious sort of setting, that can be reset. It can actually, it's not needed. It doesn't need to happen. But if I tell people the philosophy or psychology of on how you can, at the very least, agree to disagree, you become the alien. You become the fire that nobody wants to get close to. And if anybody does understand this pain, I'm just going to try and explain a way of how I deal with this. If you are in a relationship and 9 times out of 10 your partner isn't doing certain things that you want them to do, or understand certain points of view that you have, then you've got to find a way in which to still express yourself and be you, but also take their beliefs and needs, I suppose, into the equation. And there's sometimes when you do this and you believe that you take everybody else's beliefs into the equation, and this is what I get a lot of, but you don't get anything back from that. You don't get the other person doing that. And there's another sort of loop of sort of anger and rage that can come from that when you know that you've tried to do everything right, kind, in the nicest way possible, to really just help somebody, or really just to express an opinion, but you've been alienated, or even worse, rejected, because that opinion either triggers an emotion or it's just not their opinion. So how do we deal with that? The feeling of being rejected and alienated because of you being you. And I think that, again, the problem isn't external. It's not in the other party. It's always more work to do on yourself, unfortunately. And it's to really be at peace with the knowledge that you don't actually have to help everybody that you meet, or you don't actually have to ever tell anybody your opinions and beliefs. We live in a society now where we project our ego, we project ourselves, and we paint this story, and we try and paint it as, you know, the most positive way, that you're really happy and everything's going really well for you, and you're really successful, and you have your own YouTube channel, and you have lots of followers on Instagram, and you build up this story that on the outside looks like everything is perfect. And I think there's some sort of self-acceptance that you've got to do here, and say that's not reality, is it? You suffer with a lot of pain. You have a sort of painful experience psychologically with people, and this can turn into physical pain as well. And when you do this self-acceptance for yourself only, you can't ever do it for anybody else. You can't ever really understand anybody. It's hard enough to really accept and understand yourself, never mind anybody else. I think you come to the realisation that you don't have to really do anything, and all them things that you think that you have to do, the things that you think you have to say, they don't have to come to the surface. They come to the surface in your mind, but you don't have to express this into reality. And this makes you really just understand how to communicate even better, how to really listen to somebody, and how to understand how really most of your actions are actually just for your self-preservation, for your ego, or just your identity, to remain the false image that it is in the first place. Now, when you're self-preserving a false image that you've manufactured, you are always going to get this sort of feeling of rejection and alienation because there's no substance of truth in it. And I think that consciousness for me is the key. When I say consciousness, I'm talking about intelligence. When you are acting rationally, based on all the evidence that is completely unbiased to any of your emotions, then you can engage in any conversation. You can engage and express your views because there is no transaction that ever has to take place. And the alienation and the rejection actually comes from you. You perceive that somebody else's belief and interpretation is actually slightly real, which isn't the case. And I would argue that you never really know who you are. You never, even though you try to project an image of an identity, you don't really know what's going on half of the time. So this is just something that I've been thinking about for the last few days. I've just wanted to get it down. It's just, I know it just sounds like a rambling conversation, but hopefully it connected with somebody out there that you don't have to really do the stuff that you actually think that you do. You're okay the way that you are. The way that you express yourself is completely fine. And if you don't ever get that expression of kindness and sensitivity back from the other person, it is more to do with their stuff than your stuff. And I think we're really quick to antagonise and turn it inwards in a horrible and dark way to we must achieve perfection. And I think that the one thing that I've learned about psychology and information and the way the world is, that perfection is not possible. It's just a possibility. It's just a perception. And it's a perception that we really aim for, with most of us thinking it's attainable. It's going to bring us happiness. And I think the truth is that you have to be very humble and accept that you are genuinely a project, a work in progress, stumbling through this, whatever this happens to be. And wherever you sort of stumble onto will be the next place that you have another episode, another perception of reality. So hopefully this message shows that you don't have to beat yourself up for stumbling around in the dark, because I can guarantee you every person that you meet is doing exactly that. Is it better for you to know that you're doing that? I think it is. I think it can be a guide. You can produce a map now to know that you're stumbling in the dark, but you have a light on in the fact that you know that you're stumbling around in the dark, and you will always stumble around in the dark. And a lot of people that just don't know that that's what's going on. And you can get lost in the perception that that person knows this and that person's going somewhere, and I should attain to my, person who's above me, and I should aspire to that person, and this person is now below me because I've got to this level. And it is all just rhubarb, just pure nonsense.